The correct rotation is the make or break point for any jungler. You can have the best aiming and combo skills, but if you are never at the right place at the right time, you will always be an average jungler at best and lose countless matches because of it. So, let's change this. Hello my friends, we're 5 mythically motor players with over 45,000 matches of experience, and today we will reveal the secrets how to execute the perfect rotation for every jungler. We will not only show you a ton of real examples how to do it, but we will also give you an exclusive step-by-step guide that you can simply follow in every match. So every decision you make from now on have a clear reason and goal in mind. Like this, you can easily improve your win rate as a jungler by at least 10%. First, we need to cover the basics though. Currently, we have 2 types of jungler: damage jungler and utility jungler. Both have a different job and role to play, which will affect how they take objective and how the rotation works. I'll keep the explanation short and simple and give you the pros and cons for both types. Firstly, damage jungler have a high damage output. Like duh. As you can deal a huge amount of damage, you will become the executor for your team. So it will be your responsibility to secure kills. Secondly, quick mobility. Most assassin heroes have some kind of repositioning skill that helps them to rotate quickly. This means you can quickly provide backup when it's needed and gank the enemy side lanes much more often. Thirdly, you have the ability to split push. As their wave clear and push ability is pretty good, you have the flexibility to split push in the late game. And fourthly, they're good at targeting key heroes and damage dealers. Assassins usually lock on a single enemy unit and deal explosive damage to eliminate them in an instant. So they are very good at deleting key heroes like the enemy jungler or marksman, which lets you secure objectives like the Lord much more easier. It's not all shines and rainbows though. Picking a damage jungler comes with a couple of downsides as well. Firstly, they are dependent on buffs. Most assassins have high mana or energy costs for their skills, or they need cooldown reduction to get access to their skills faster. So without the buff, especially the blue one, they are quite limited. Secondly, they have no utilities and teamfights. Most damage junglers have a common problem with their utilities. Their skill set often lacks AoE and CC power, thus affecting their presence in huge teamfights. It is just incredibly hard to target a single hero if all 5 enemies are sticking together. Thirdly, they're easy to invade in the early game. Most damage junglers can't really fight back when you invade them. This makes them easy prey for enemies who are good at invading. And fourthly, they're squishy AF. With huge power comes great responsibility. You don't have a good durability and you're the main target for the enemies. So if you're not careful, your death counter will skyrocket. These are the general pro and cons for a damage jungler, and I must say, this Hayabusa skin is fire! If you ever consider buying diamonds, you should definitely re-download Mobile Legends with AppCoins, as you can get up to 30% more diamonds using my code MLGuide. You're not only supporting your own wallet but also us, as we can create more awesome ML guides with your support. Check out the tutorial in the pinned comment and thanks for your support. Now, how does it all look for a utility jungler? Firstly, they are powerful in the early game and have high sustainability. These junglers come with higher base attributes like HP and hybrid defenses. They can clear the jungle fast thanks to the bonus damage that scales with their HP. These junglers come with higher base attributes like HP and hybrid defenses. They can clear the jungle fast thanks to the bonus damage that scales with their HP. And they're good at the early game ganks, as almost nobody can kill them. Secondly, they have a strong presence in team fights. Not only are utility junglers sturdier, but their skill set often comes with a large AoE and strong CC effects. This makes them very annoying to their enemies, be it in the early skirmishes or in the big team fights. Thirdly, they are good at controlling neutral objectives. Using their strong body, utility junglers can zone out enemies from the objectives. Thus, they can make sure to secure it without too much trouble. And fourthly, they are flexible picks. Utility junglers have better flexibility when picked during the draft phase. They can often be used as a jungler, but also as a roamer or a XP laner. Which means your team has the ability to pick better counters against your enemies. If you think that this all sounds pretty OP, let me explain the downsides quickly. Firstly, they are dependent on allies to deal damage. And I know right now every solo queue player screams in pain. Despite their huge bodies, they deal tiny damage compared to the assassins. They are highly dependent on their teammates to deal damage, which you don't want if you have a Hanafi as your ally. Secondly, they are bad at targeting key heroes. Since junglers can only equip Retribution as their spell, they will have a hard time reaching the key heroes that you need to defeat. So, you're again relying on your allies to fulfill this job. Thirdly, they are nothing more than a meat shield in the late game. As the game goes on, utility junglers will fall off after the enemies got most of their items. Even the thickest armor can be penetrated, so you often can't sustain as much anymore and you are forced to retreat, or you have to take the L for the team and hope they will do something with it. Knowing many Epical Glory players, yeah, that's not a good idea. And fourthly, they lack the mobility to rotate. Utility junglers are pretty slow, so they need to plan their steps further ahead. I mean, when you wear 4 armor sets, I can't even blame them. This makes their side laners more prone to ganks if the enemy has a damaged jungler, as they can move around much quicker than you can. Now, after learning the general idea how each type of jungler works, we can start to remember another thing before we actually start with the rotation part. Just stick with me, it will be quick, but we need to include this for later. To master the jungle rotation, we need to remember 2 important points. First, you need to know the power spikes of every hero. Each hero got a different time where they reach their power spike, so take a look at your lineup. Does your team have early power spikers like Selena, Lilia or Brody? Or does your team need to farm first before making an impact when you have, for example, a Sicilian, Mia and Xbox in your team? By understanding when all your allies and enemies have their power spike, you can avoid making most of your bad decisions during the whole game. Psst. We are currently working on a guide where we explain where every hero have their power spike, so subscribe now. For example, if you keep joining early game skirmishes using 𝐾𝐤𝐬𝐽 in the early game, you will always be doomed under normal circumstances. As most veteran players know, 𝐾𝐤𝐬𝐽 need to reach level 12 before he reaches his power spike. Playing aggressively in the early game means you just waste time, which means you are useless even after reaching level 12 because you are so far behind. Secondly, pick your rotation pattern. There are a couple of questions you need to answer for yourself before the game even starts. And this is also where it depends if you play a utility or a damage jungler. Firstly, does your hero is dependent on the blue buff, or can you just start anywhere where you want because you're flexible? Your farming rotation might be set in stone because of this special trait alone. Some heroes like Fanny and Ling will always be disadvantageous in this situation because they need to start at the blue buff. Here you can see 2 possible rotation patterns. When you start blue, you can go up to the Letho if it's on your side of the map, and if not, I suggest you go to Riki and the red buff right away. Then you kill this small camp on 5 and gank the bot lane. If you start red, you can take Riki and the Letho before you move on to the blue buff and the small camp top. And then you can gank the top lane. Like this, you can do a full rotation while farming non-stop. That's why we also don't really need to lay out a rotation route like in our mage rotation guide, as you should always rotate through your jungle to end up on a side lane or in the river area. Secondly, does your team have a lot of ganking power, or is it full of teamfight heavy heroes? If your team has a strong ganking lineup, you play for example Saber and have a Franco and a Eudora on your side, you want to secure many kills and target the enemy gold laner to delay the farm as much as possible. It doesn't really matter if the enemy can secure the turtle if you can collect way more kills than them. This doesn't mean that you should ignore the turtle, of course. If there's a chance to get it, do it. If you have a strong teamfight lineup though, you play for example Fredrin and have an Estes and Lilia on your side, you should prioritize the turtle as you have the ability to easily secure it. You should try to gank the lane where the turtle spawns, so you have the numbers advantage when trying to secure it. Make sure to not give away any kills though, because otherwise the turtle is more or less useless. And thirdly, is there any ally that needs special assistance? If you gold laner choose Claude and they need to face a Brody, you really need to help that poor fella or he will be eaten up alive. The same goes if the enemy roamer decides to babysit their MM. You need your marksman in the late game no matter if you play a damage or utility jungler, and you really don't want to face a fat marksman who can blast you to the moon with a single shot. That's why the strongest XP laners are those who can survive on their own, because they only receive support when the turtle is on their side. These are all the basics you need to know, so let me show you now how a perfect jungler rotation looks like in a real game. First, let me reveal the exclusive step-by-step guide that I promised to you in the beginning though. I would suggest that you write these 7 steps down on a piece of paper and lay them in front of you, at least at the beginning. After a while, you will remember them automatically. Step 0. Decide which buff to get first. This step you only have to make once in the beginning of the match, that's why it's step 0. Step 1. Plan your next gank. As damage jungler, go to the gold lane to kill their marksman, or go to the lane where you can pick off a low HP enemy. As utility jungler, target the lane where the turtle spawns. Step 2. Execute your jungle rotation. This means you clear your jungle on your way to the target, so you end up on the side lane you want to gank. It could also mean that you invade the enemy's jungle if you play a hero like Fanny, for example. Step 3. Have a successful gank, and then right away step 4. Get the objective. Generally, the goal of every gank is that you can get an objective afterwards. An objective could be the turtle, a turret, an invasion, or whatever brings you closer to victory. The kill itself is not really an objective, although it brings you also closer to victory as you can farm golden XP with it, while delaying the enemy's farm. Step 5. If any of the previous steps fail, make sure to level out the field. If the enemy managed to get the turtle, for example, you could gank, for example, the opposite side lane as this guy is left alone, and then destroy their turret, for example. Step 6. Repeat step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like this, you always know what you need to do next and you will never idle around. Now let me show you how to execute this step-by-step guide in a real match. You can always see which step we're at on the top right corner. If you pay attention to the lineup, the enemies are using an extremely aggressive early lineup with Fanny and Lilia. So here is a quick quiz. As a jungler, which buff would you secure first? Is it the red buff or the blue buff? If your answer is the red buff, then you're right. We need to secure the red buff first to avoid an early invasion from Fanny. This also more or less forces us to gank the XP lane first, because we will end up there after our first full rotation. Meanwhile, our ladyfish is getting smashed by Lilia's bolts, and she got almost turned into fish paste because of this short early skirmish. The enemy also seemed to have a map hack. Instead of flying straight to the red buff, Fanny decides to go straight to our blue buff instead. We have a serious disadvantage now since our Kadita is not in the condition to fight, but luckily this Fanny was too hasty with her retribution and we could secure our buff. Otherwise step 2 would have been a failure, which means we somehow have to level out the field somehow. I noticed something, by the way. Why the hell is our Belleric still in our freaking base?
Oh shit.
Oh well, since this Fanny failed to invade our jungle, we now have the chance to send the lost child back to her father. After taking the early lead over your enemies, the next thing you should do is adjust your plan. As we already had a successful gank, we can move on to step 4. Now we have the chance to invade the enemy's jungle. After spending so many cables to invade and go back, Fanny's energy is low AF. So you can just go ahead and pee on her to show dominance. What the Oh god. Of course, I messed up the invasion thanks to Florence Balls. Well, you still get the idea. When you're ahead, you should be bold and try to snowball. After failing the invasion, we execute step 6, which is going back to step 1. Also, isn't it great how both 𝐉𝐸𝐺 and 𝐾𝐤𝐬 are still on level 1 after 1.5 minutes? Yeah, I go back to the rotation part, but I can't just believe those players. Like, what's that? Now we need to become level 4 before we gank the XP lane. Why the XP lane and not the gold lane, as we're a damage jungler? 𝐉𝐸𝐺 babysits our marksmen, so they are fine on their own. So we need to support our mid and XP laner. To do that, we rotate bot first as we have 2 small camps there. And after reaching level 4, we start a gank on the top lane. But first, never forget to be generous with your pokes to the enemy while you rotate. This will add pressure to the enemies in the next fight. Now, if you pay attention to the timer, Fanny must be out of buff. The first buff spawns after 20 seconds. So if Fanny needs around 20 seconds to clear it, she has it between 0:40 till 1:55. This means she don't have it currently, and we can adjust our plan once again. As you can see, she has no energy to fight us. So let's take down this annoying little twerp once again. Nothing personal, I'm totally not mad because she ruined my early invasion. So we had our successful gank although we adjusted the target, but since I used my retribution to secure the kill, we can't get the turtle right now. It is just too risky to take it now since Bane is not visible on the minimap. As we kill Florin though, so we failed step 4 and have to move on to step 5. As we killed Florin, we already fulfilled step 5 though, as we got an advantage out of it, so we can go back to step 1 and plan our next gank. The goal is still to get the turtle, so go first to your jungle to farm, before we're finally starting a gank on the top lane. Since our tank is busy babysitting the gold laner, we have to manage this 3v4 fight. The safest strategy for an outnumbered fight is to ambush and pick off the enemies one by one. Most fighters have decent damage and annoying CCs for the team fight, so taking this chubby octopus down before the objective fight starts will reduce their fighting power by a lot. You could also skip the neutral objective though. Sometimes you're just not in the mood for turtle soup, so go ahead and use that retribution to secure the kill on that one annoying support. Our Hanabi is having the time of her life anyway. No one is ganking her lane and she just ate up the whole turret gold shield. So she will be just fine even without the turtle buff. Now, even though Fanny managed to secure the turtle, we still won the overall trade, as we got a big meal of Bane, Bruno, Florin and Lilia, with some extra bottom turret and enemy red buff on top. The bottom line here is, don't get almost wiped out to secure the turtle. It's not worth your death. Now the next correct decision will be to plan our next gank and go back to farming. But I lost my focus and went ahead for the blue buff, which is pretty stupid because she obviously took them before the turtle fight even began. Thus, I got shut down. This means all the early advantage that we've earned is now lost with this single blunder. A truly deserved death, Fanny now invades our red buff and tries to get our blue buff next, although her own buff is also available now. She basically repeats the same mistake that I just did. Without buff, she runs out of energy so fast that she becomes an easy victim, and the same goes for this Florin.
Nothing personal, kid.
Here we basically skipped step 1 and 2 because we were forced into a gank, so now we can move on to claim our objective. In this case, we gained map control, so we can easily take the turtle now. By the way, this new hero is really OP right now. I know the best 20 heroes to rank up video is already out, but I still want to recommend this guy one more time before he goes into the permaban jail. There's a really good quick guide start if you want to know how to play him. Now, after taking the objective, we should usually plan our next gank and execute our jungle rotation. But as you can see on the map, our jungle is empty. There is a low HP Lilia and Florin on the mid lane though, so you can also skip step 2 and directly execute your plan from step 1.
Nothing personal, kid.
Generally, these steps should only help you making decisions, but you don't need to follow them religiously. If there's a ganking chance like here, just skip a step and take it. You can follow these steps throughout the whole game until the late game starts. Your objective then is securing the Lord and ending the game as fast as possible, so you should try to force a gank by invading the enemy's jungle, for example, and then take the Lord, which you can use then to push the remaining turrets away. That you can execute the whole step-by-step guide I can show you here right before the end. Here we just wiped out the enemy, so the next gank is inside of the base. The goal is obviously to destroy it. As I said before, step 2 can be ignored often, especially in the late game. So we can start the gank right away. After we killed the enemies again, we can now take the objective, which in this case is the enemy's base. It's really simple, isn't it? Now check out this guide where we show you the 20 best heroes for Season 30 in solo queue. Also a huge shout out to our MLG family members, especially the mythical glory members like Fanny Bootcamp and Van. See you over there!